it's been bestowed upon me to talk about the election and our elected officials, pray upon them in this week of prayer and fasting. First off, thank you for doing this with us. If you have been, even if it's not for the whole time, jumping in midway through, or even just writing it out for the first couple of days, depending on what you gave up, your struggles with that. I pray that every time you do it, you can keep doing more and more and more and longer. But yeah, so our elected officials, we had some, the midterm elections, so not for president, but for some of us state governors, state representatives, federal representatives, and some locals as well. I don't know that it went as the way that most people thought it was going to go. The way things have been going lately with, since our last election, the presidential election in 2020, it's been, the world's been a little different. So I feel some people thought it was going to go a different way, and honestly, it may have gone a different way. And I'm going to bring up a couple different things with you. I'm going to talk about three things today: where we were, where we are, and where we need to go. So before this election, we were in a spot where, the economies, the United States in general was just in a declining spot. So, it almost dictated that we needed to make some other changes. Whatever changes we made in 2020 weren't working out. There's a lot of factors that go into it, whether that was through the elections or through other things. But we needed to possibly make some changes. A big decision that came out through the Supreme Court during that time before the election was the reversal of Roe v. Wade. And it's not like it made abortion illegal. It meant that the federal government wasn't going to monitor it. They weren't going to make it illegal across the country. They just said it was up to the states to make that decision for themselves. It wasn't the federal government's job to make that. It was unconstitutional for the federal government to monitor it. If you wanted to monitor it as and approve it, decline it, whatever, as a state, it was up to the states to make that decision. And there were 6 states that had it on their docket. Maybe some people missed it. It was on the back of the ballots. So you had to really pay attention. Hopefully your voting officials that were at the polls were indicating that to you, because it was a very important thing. So the 6 states that were involved were Michigan, California, Vermont, Montana, Kansas, and Kentucky. It went 3 and 3. 3 approved, 3 declined. Michigan, California, and Vermont approved it, which is unfortunate. But it's something that we can improve down the road. So that's where we were. I gave a little bit of the post-election right there, but where we're at now. But it made a big pull for a lot of people to show up at the polls, and I have to say that not a lot of people did. So this is where we are now. Looking back, you had those 6 states that voted on it: Montana, Kansas, Kentucky. Turned it down, rejected it, any measures to allow abortion. One of the big things that I like to talk about is voter turnout. I didn't find New York. I live in New York, so I'm talking to a bigger Vermont area during this, but New York is so close that I include that as well, and that's what's important to me, because that's where I live. But Vermont had roughly let's see what I wrote down here, roughly a 56% turnout. 56% of the voters turnout. That's registered voters. That's not people who did not register and take the time to register. Those are registered voters. 56% did not show up. New York was even worse. 47% couldn't even bother to show up at the polls and cast a vote. Again, it wasn't for president, and some people only vote for president, which I don't understand. They're not this end-all be-all. Our local officials are, honestly, I feel, almost more important, because the federal government, as they did with abortion, doesn't control everything. They leave it up to the states and the local entities to make those decisions for us. So it's so important to vote for every level of government. But it's sad to say that happened, and I would say focus on New York quite a bit in that. We had such a tight race for governor that the decision was made between like with less than, or just over 300,000 votes made the difference in the vote for governor, which may seem like a lot of votes, but over 6 million people didn't bother showing up to the polls. Over 6 million registered voters did not cast a vote. 2 counties alone, if either one of them had had a full turnout, could have swayed the election. Over, I think it was 500,000 in one county down in the Bronx and Queens. Over 500,000 and 600,000 people who are registered didn't show up to vote. Very sad, but that was across the entire state. Very few were above 50%, but they were drastically lower, like 30 and 26% voter turnout. We need to get out there and vote. That's plain and simple. We need to get out there and vote. You need to cast your vote, and it's so important as Christians to get our views out there. I feel Christians sometimes can be very hesitant to step into that realm because it's so confrontational potentially and all that stuff. They don't want to get into political conversations because it's just arguing, and we don't want to do that. We're all about love. Well, you don't have to argue about it. You can express your views with love, and that's where we need to go. Our last part of this is we need to get into a spot where we reach the general public. I don't feel that it's necessarily up to our government elected officials to make the rules for us. What if we as a society decided not to follow the biblical commandments and the messages of Jesus Christ, just live them out? Would we need all these rules? We would just be following those. And there's rules against murder and all this other stuff. Well, there's commandments against them too. So if we just followed them, we wouldn't need the rules, and we'd be able to monitor ourselves. It's up to us to teach, guide, and then correct other people as we walk with them in Christ. It's not up to our government officials to punish and limit us, as it were. It's important to get out there and vote, and if a measure can't be decided, like there are little tiny things that possibly we can't monitor and help people with, make some rules on those. But I just personally feel that we need to teach, guide, and correct people in their walk with Christ and their walk through this world. It's our better way. I mean, our goal at Revive is change lives, reach the next generation, and impact the culture with the love and grace of Jesus Christ. That last one is, I mean, they're all big, but that last one is so big and it's so important on this. What if we guided people to the voter booths and we got people to vote? What if we had 75%? What if we had 100% turnout at the polls? What would those look like? Was there a percentage of people that felt the other way in those 3 states that voted for abortion rights? Were there more people that just decided to sit at home and not cast a vote? I mean, I'm looking at the percentages. 56% in Michigan, California had 65%, Vermont had 75%. Could those have been swayed the other way had people gone out and actually voted? Other than, emergency things, there's almost no reason not to vote. In New York, I don't know if it's the same everywhere else. I feel like it is. We could vote for almost over a week. You could cast an early vote for a week before election day. And then federal government regulations require that your employers have to give you the time to cast a vote. It's so important. And there might be some measures you have to do in between to make sure you have that, but it's so important. It's so important to vote. I can't express it enough how important it is. I was one of those people that felt, oh, what's it matter? My one vote doesn't matter. Your one vote can matter. It really can, because it's a vote for Christian views. I feel like if you're watching this, you're a Christian, or you're at least interested in what those views are. And this year just had such a hot topic, especially in Vermont, of abortion rights, and that's such a Christian necessity to cast your opinion on, because there's nowhere in the Bible where it supports abortion. It's murder, no matter how you look at it. Now, it's not to cast judgment on those who have in the past. We have different societies had different views on it throughout the tenure, but since Roe v. Wade and even before that, honestly, there's a great movie that my wife and I watched called Eve in Exile. I highly suggest watching it. It's about the early on stages of feminism, whatever you want to call it, or abortion. And it's such an interesting way of how we segued away from our Christian views, because a lot of Christian, even religious type views, Christians aren't the only ones that are against abortion, are against all these things. And we segued from it and made it about us, not about God, about us. I feel like that's God's decision. It's not ours to automatically, well, I don't feel ready for this. I can't do this. Maybe God's putting you in that position so you can, because God doesn't give us any responsibility that we can't handle, and it all relies on Him. I know this is kind of a long one today, but I wanted to thank you for joining us, and get out and vote. Moving forward, what we need to do now is you need to contact your representatives. You need to sit down with them. You need to it doesn't matter whether you voted for them or not. Come at it with love, compassion. Do not come in there with hostility. Most people do not respond well to hostility. I'd say almost no one responds well to hostility. All we try to do is put that fire out, but with love and passion, and compassion, I should say, people will respond better to that. And that's what I am putting on you today. When the opportunity arises, contact your officials, give them our viewpoint, and get multiple people together. Get a town hall. Have them show up to it. Make it a thing where they have to show up, and make sure that it's in love and compassion. Do not argue. You're expressing your views. They don't have to agree with it the first time. Maybe it might take you 10 times to do it. They may change their mind if that's what they're seeing as the populace opinion. So get out there, talk to your officials, and then in the future, get out and vote. Express that opinion. Get out and talk to people and get them to vote. Have them come with the understanding of where we stand on it, where Christ stands on that. It's so important that we do this. Thank you all for joining me here on this. And it was kind of a long-winded conversation. I'm very passionate about it. Honestly, I probably didn't even say half the stuff I wanted to. But I want to thank you for joining us, and I pray that on the 6th day of fasting that you are able to push through all the way through tomorrow, and even further if you wanted to, if that was your desire, and really connect with Christ in that. And I thank you for joining me.